Hello, everybody. Welcome to the review show. Tonight's edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room as we look back at hopefully what you had was a great sporting weekend. Some did, some didn't. I'll tell you who did have a great weekend after 3,000 kilometers in the saddle. I'm sure he's relaxing today. Today, Pogačar completed a supreme performance to win the Tour de France in a rainy Paris, crushing his rivals to collect a fourth title. Wout van Aert triumphed on the final cliffhanger day around the Montmartre, but Pogačar was spared any late challenge to his overall lead when the weather forced organisers to neutralise times to avoid accidents on the slippery, cobbled roads. However, Pogačar, with more than played his part in a thrilling finale before the Belgian rider Van Aert pulled away on the last small climb of the day. The Slovenian has now won Tour de France 4 times in 6 years, and the other 2 occasions he finished runner-up. Second place, Jonas Vingegaard was unable to contend with Pogačar, but the winner paid tribute to the day, and he said he spoke to him today. They've been racing each other for 5 years now, and they've raised each other to a higher level. Despite the rain, tens of thousands of spectators packed Montmartre to follow Pogačar's progress through the narrow streets of the popular tourist spot. He played to the delighted crowds by racing to the head of the peloton near the Moulin Rouge Cabaret at the foot of the climb before Van Aert produced a well-timed attack to drop Pogačar and charge to the finish line on the Champs-Élysées Avenue. Pogačar was 4th on the day, but after wins in 2020, 2021 and 2024, he again proved untouchable in the world's greatest bike race. Vingegaard, the champion in 2022 and 2023, suffered 2 shocking off days and ended second overall, 4 minutes and 24 seconds behind. He says he now has a week off, and then he starts to train for the Vuelta. Breakout German star Florian Lipovic took the 3rd spot on his debut, rounding out the podium, but he was 11 minutes off the pace in 3rd. Defending his title, Pogačar embarked from the start in nil as clear favourite and won 4 stages along the way. In the first week, he struck on rolling runs in the north and west of Rouen and Mur de la Bretagne. He then turned the screws on the slopes of the Pyrenees in week 2 with his rivals as good as vanquished. Vingegaard suffered on stage 5 time trial and again in the second week at the Hotam Mountains, leaving the Dane in shock as his form abandoned him. Ahead of a massive turnaround in the Alps, Pogačar adopted mature tactics and sat on his rival's wheel. After it was all over, a beaming Pogačar said he could finally relax. A barnstorming first week of the Tour revealed a raft of emerging stars. Lipovic was given a run for his money for third place by the 22-year-old Scot Oscar Onley, whose steady ride propelled him to 4th overall. The pair came 1st and 2nd, a minute adrift in the white jersey battle for the best under-26 rider, raising hopes of a new Tour rivalry in the making. And Ireland's Ben Healy bagged a stage win in a 2-day stint in the yellow jersey. Adding an heroic near-miss on Mont Ventoux was enough to earn Healy the prize for combativity, voted for by the public. The return of one-time guru Dave Brailsford from his role at Manchester United to Ineos Grenadiers was overshadowed by the team's Italian powerhouse Filippo Ganna, falling early on stage 1 and was withdrawn due to concussion. Having previously masterminded 7 overall Tour de France wins, Brailsford dug in, and the team's Dutch glider Timon Arensman pulled off heists in the Pyrenees and the Alps to win 2 stages. France's sole and unexpected stage win came on the lunar-like summit of Mont Ventoux, where Valentin Paré-Pontré won an enthralling war of attrition with Healy. The 2025 Tour, though, will be remembered for Pogačar's all-round performance. Brilliant performance by him in the yellow. Moving on to the papaya, and it was McLaren this weekend who dominated the main race, while Max Verstappen won the sprint race. Oscar Piastri held off his McLaren teammate Lando Norris to win a rain-delayed Belgian Grand Prix. Ferrari Charles Leclerc came 3rd as Piastri stretched his lead in the driver's standings over Norris to 16 points. Heavy rain had delayed the 13th round of the season by 80 minutes, with organisers eventually allowing a rolling start after 4 laps behind the safety car. And then, of course, the drivers got underway and Norris was quickly passed by Piastri. He complained he had a problem with his car battery. Piastri then produced a controlled race from the front to lead home McLaren's 6th 1-2 of the season. He said he knew he was going to have to give his best chance of winning the race on the first lap, but the rest of the race was managed really well. Norris said that Oscar did a good job, nothing more to say. I don't think Lando is too happy with what's going on there at the moment at McLaren. Max Verstappen, the winner of Saturday's sprint, took fourth in Laurent Meki's first race weekend as Red Bull team principal after the sacking of Christian Horner a fortnight ago. But that's not where it ended. There was a lot of controversy with regards to Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, who were unhappy. Both multiple world champions accused race organisers of being overcautious when the start of the Grand Prix was delayed by 80 minutes. Four-time champion Verstappen said he believed that instead of suspending the race after one formation lap behind the safety car, race control should have kept the field out on the track to clear the standing water. They said it wasn't even raining, referring to the decision taken at the scheduled start time of 3 o'clock local time. He said there were water on the track between turns 1 and 5, but if you do 2 or 3 laps behind the safety car, it'd been a lot more clear and the rest of the track was ready to go anyways. And it's a bit of a shame. He knew that they would be a bit more cautious because of Silverstone, but this also didn't make any sense. Instead of staying out, however, the field were taken back into the pit lane to wait for more than an hour, waiting until improved weather conditions prevailed. The race then began with a rolling start after 4 laps behind the safety car. Verstappen finished off the podium for the third consecutive race. As I mentioned, Piastri led teammate Norris for another 1-2. Ferrari's Hamilton said race organisers had overreacted after Mercedes' Kimi Antonelli and Alpine's Isaac Hedger collided at Silverstone in poor visibility. The weekend, he thinks they went too far the other way after a disappointing Saturday when he was twice eliminated in the first part of qualifying for the sprint race and the Grand Prix. Seven-time world champion responded with a rousing drive to start 18th and finish 7th. He says he always loves races like where you're challenged and have to make your way through the field, but ultimately he's disappointed to have had not to have had a great weekend. Definitely one to forget, but at least he got some points for his team. However, Williams driver Carlos Sainz supported the decision as a safe call given the history of the sprawling high-speed circuit. He said he respects the race director's decision because they told him at Silverstone after the accident that it would play it safer, and that's what they did. He accepted that the race could have started much earlier on a normal circuit, but pointed out that as a result of the decision taken by the race, it was run for a full 44 laps. On a normal track, he said, he thinks maybe they could have started earlier by 5 or 10 minutes, but at Spa, with the history of the track, it's better to be safe than sorry. The Spa-Francorchamps circuit has been the scene of 53 fatalities, including 2 in the last 6 years due to poor weather conditions. Those 2 in the last 6 years, of course, not coming in Formula One. He says that is why it is safer than having an accident, and he's grateful that they did. So where to now? Well, one more race for the summer break. They're off to Hungary this weekend for the Prix in Budapest at the Hungaroring, another very fast sweeping track, and generally one where the weather is absolutely beautiful. And then, of course, it's a break for 3 weeks before the season gets back underway at Zandvoort in the Netherlands for the home race of Max Verstappen. And I'm sure after Belgium, people will be going, oh, they're going off on holiday, they're going to lie on the Riviera and spend time on a yacht and have a wonderful life. I can tell you right now, a lot of these top drivers might go away for a day or 2 or 3, at best maybe a week, but they will be in simulators and at the factory trying to get things right, especially Max Verstappen, of all of them, because he is an absolute perfectionist when it comes down to getting his car back underway. Right, let's have a look at what happened over the weekend with regards to cricket, and I'm going to try and be as absolutely polite as I possibly can. South Africa lost by 3 runs in the final of the Tri-Nations competition against New Zealand. I'm going to say all they needed was 7 runs off the last over with plenty of wickets in hand, and once again, they botched it. I'm not going to use that word. I refuse to use that word, but it's getting closer and closer to me using that word. The one you all know, the one that has been labelled with this white ball cricket team, and unfortunately, it is results like these that make the rest of the world and the other cricketing nations not worry too much if South Africa needs 6 or 7 runs off the last over because they botched it. It's quite simple as that. They did reasonably well to restrict New Zealand to 180 in their 20 overs. It was thanks to the New Zealand innings not really getting underway. Nobody even got a half century. Devon Conway and Rachin Ravindra top scoring there with 47 apiece. Steady bowling, 2 for 24 for Lungi and Gidi. Andre Berger was a little expensive, 1 for 41 in his 4 overs. So was Quentin Mapaka, 1 for 35 in his 4 overs. George Linder only bowled 1 over. It took 9 runs off. Uttasami got 1 for 27, and Corbin Bosch also a little bit expensive, 0 for 38. Bearing in mind, that was an average pass score, 180, and South Africa came out to bat. Got off to an absolute flyer with Luandre Pretorius getting 51 off 35. Reza Hendricks, 37 off 31. Rassie van der Dussen, 18 off 17. Ruben Herman, 11 off 8. And then Dewald Brevis came in, smashed 31 off 16, which put South Africa in an amazingly good position, needing just 7 off the last over, and they couldn't seal the game. Just couldn't seal it. 2 for 19 for Matthew Henry, a wicket apiece for Duffy, Folkes, Milner and Satner, who normally is the best of the bowlers for New Zealand. He didn't even pick up a wicket. 1 for 29 for Michael Bracewell. And as I say, South Africa losing that one at the end of the day by 3 runs, and a very disappointing performance. And as you look at the South African score, 92 before they lost their first wicket, and that was off just 9 overs and 4 balls, well ahead of the run rate. And even when they got to the 15th over at 131 for 4, they were still going along very nicely, but absolutely tossed it did the South Africans at the end. 174 for 5 in the Brevis' wicket fell. Brilliant catch, I might add, but be that as it may, South Africa missing out against New Zealand. In the other cricket action, it was a drawn test match between England and India. That takes them to the 5th and final test match coming up at the Oval. England cannot lose the series. India need to win to draw the series. England need a draw just to win the series. It was a very high-scoring game with some big innings, 300s in the Indian second innings, and a 90 for Rahul. 103 for Sutman Gill, Washington Sundar 101, Jadeja 107. But it was after the Indians lost their first 2 wickets in the first over of their reply to England's mammoth 669 all out that you thought, maybe England can clinch this one. But some magnificent stalwart batting from those 4 individuals. And Rahul, we're disappointed he also didn't get 100, ending, as I say, with drawn test match, hands shook quite reluctantly, I might add, after tea. Zach Crawley got 84 for England in their mammoth innings, 94 for Ben Duckett, 71 for Ollie Pope, 150 for Joe Root, who's now the second highest run scorer in Test cricket history. Ben Stokes got 141. He'll be delighted with that, not only getting a century, but also taking 5 in the first innings. England 669, and the test match was drawn. In other cricket action over the weekend, yesterday's 4th T20 International saw Australia win by 3 wickets with 4 balls to spare, 206 for 7 after the West Indies scored 205 for 9 in their allotted 20 overs. In the 3rd T20 International between the two sides on Saturday, the West Indies and Australia, another close one for the Australians in terms of West Indies out for 214 in 20 overs on a good batting pitch, but then Australia absolutely smashed them. 215 for 4 in 16 overs and 1 ball to win by 6 wickets. And that was a clinching game for the Australians as far as that series is concerned. So where to now? Well, in the early hours of tomorrow morning, the West Indies will play Australia in the 5th T20 International, and then Zimbabwe play New Zealand. That one starts on Wednesday, test match in Zimbabwe, in Harare. Then England against India, the 5th test match at the Oval starts on Thursday. Friday, the West Indies play Pakistan in the 1st T20 International. Sunday, West Indies play Pakistan in the 2nd T20 International, and then lots and lots of cricket cricket next week, Monday, as we head towards the series in Australia, where our Proteas go off to play the Australians in T20 cricket as well as one-day international cricket. Sunday a week, the 10th of August, sees the first T20 international between those two fierce rivals. Different team going off there with Markram and Bavuma and Rabada and all of those guys back in white ball and T20 squads. You're listening to the edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. We'll have more for you after these. Hi, I'm Louis Karpas. Join me on the next edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room as we catch up with former Banyana coach Fran Hilton-Smith as we review Banyana's performance at the latest African Cup of Nations. We also speak to Fran about her upcoming junior soccer tournament. All that and more in the next edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room with Fran Hilton-Smith. Right, let's look at the golf over the weekend, and Padraig Harrington has done it again. He has won the 367 to finish at 16 under par and claim the Handa Senior Open. That's the British Senior Open at Berkshire in England. The victory marks Harrington's second major win in 4 weeks and makes him only the fifth player to win the Open and the Senior Open. He, of course, teed the first ball off the green when the Open was played a couple of weeks ago. He won the Open in 2007 and 2008 and was on top of the cusp of winning the Senior Open in consecutive years, finishing second in 2022 and 2023, losing in a playoff in 2023 before breaking through this year. The Dublin native entered the day with a two-shot lead but never got complacent. He said he didn't want to relax. That's cost him in the past, and he was really hyped up. And to be honest, he thinks today, because it wasn't comfortable with his swing, he never let his guard down, and he came out victorious. He was the man of the moment. Justin Leonard, 4 birdies and 2 bogeys on the day for a 2 under 68, carding a 5 under 65 on Friday and Saturday. Scott Hendy finished fourth at 12 under, while fellow Australian Cameron Percy and South Africa's Ernie Els tied for fifth at 11 under par. Ernie shot a great round of 66 yesterday. Now, 2 weeks ago, Lottie Woad was the world #1 amateur. Yesterday, the 21-year-old Englishwoman became the LPGA Tour champion in her first professional debut. She won the Handa Women's Scottish Open by 3 strokes, matching her age at 21 under par after closing with a 4 under 68 at Dundonald Links in Ayrshire in Scotland. It's a pretty good outcome, she said. Definitely wasn't expecting to win her first event as a professional. She capped a remarkable month with the 5th birdie of the day at the par 5 18th hole. She won the Women's Irish Open of the Ladies European Tour as an amateur 3 weeks ago, missed a playoff by 1 shot the next week at the Evian Championship Major before deciding to skip the senior season in Florida State and turn pro. Woad, who held the lead after the second and third round, started strong yesterday with birdies at 2 and 3, 9 consecutive pars, birding 13 and 14, a lone bogey at the 16th, and victory. She matched the rare accomplishment of Rose Zhang, who in June 2023 became the first player in 72 years to win her LPGA Tour debut at the Mizuho Americas Open. Beverly Hansen won the Eastern Open in her debut in 1954. She collected $300,000 in her first pro payday and will carry a mountain of momentum into next week's 5th and final major, the AIG Women's Open at Royal Portcrawl in Wales. What a performance. Unbelievable, sensational to come through like that and win as an amateur 2 weeks ago on a professional tour, and then on your first one, take the title out. Talking about amateurs, Hamilton Coleman, a 17-year-old from Augusta, Georgia, made a birdie on the 35th hole to win the 77th U.S. Junior Amateur Championship in Dallas, 2-1 over Minh Nguyen of Vietnam. So there's another name to out for. The young 17-year-old Hamilton Coleman is the winner of the U.S. Amateur Golf Championship. So great action as far as the golf was concerned. There were some other events as well over the weekend. On the US PGA Tour, a 23 under par, Kurt Kitayama, one from Sam Stevens and Pierkosen Kudi, was at 20 under par. And at the Barracuda Championship, that, of course, was last week. Ryan Gerard beat Eric van Rooyen, the South African, in that one. And then as far as golf is concerned, a big, big announcement over the weekend, and one that, of course, many South Africans will be very, very happy about. The Live Golf Series will stage their first tournament in Africa, when Steyn City near Johannesburg will play host from the 20th to the 22nd of March next year. A multi-year contract has been signed for an annual Live Golf South Africa tournament in a country which has produced many stars, notably Grand Slam winner Gary Player. Major winners Bryson DeChambeau, Phil Mickelson, John Rahm and Sergio Garcia are some of the stars in Live Golf's stable. Louis Oosthuizen and Charles Schwartzel, former major champions from South Africa, compete on the circuit. Chilean Joaquin Niemann, who's never won a major, has been the most successful Live competitor with 6 titles. And the inclusion of South Africa raises to 5 the number of continents where Live tournaments will be staged. The tour is financed by the Saudi Arabia-based Public Investment Fund. Unlike 72-hole events staged over 4 days in the United States, Europe, Australasia, and Africa, Live uses 1 day less, confining tournaments to 54 holes. Live also differs from tours like the US PGA, where placings are decided by individual scores. It also has team competitions. And according to Ross Hallett, Live Golf official, bringing Live Golf to South Africa is another significant moment in their journey. They currently have events in Asia, Europe, Australasia, North America, and today they've added Africa, marking another exciting opportunity to showcase Live Golf to a new audience and market. The first event by the Breakaway Tour, the Live Golf London, was staged in 2022 and won by Charles Schwartzel, who had topped the Masters leaderboard 11 years earlier. Brilliant stuff. Live Golf coming to that magnificent Steyn City golf course. Okay, let's have a look at the tennis action from over the weekend. And it was lucky, according to Alex de Minaur. He rallied from a set down, saved 3 match points, and claimed the Washington Open title with a 5-7, 6-1, 7-6 win over Alejandro Davidovich Fokina in the final. The Australian number 1, who lost the 2018 final to Alexander Zverev, felt he rode his luck to secure his 10th career title and ensure he would enter the top 10 in the world rankings ahead of next month's US Open. And Gael Monfils missed, squandering 4 match points in blistering heat before exiting in the first round of the ATP Toronto Masters yesterday, losing 6-4, 4-6, 7-6 to a qualifier Thomas Barrios Vera. The Frenchman had his 4 winning chances in a pair of third-set service games against the Chilean, so he is out of that one. And Alexander Bublik won his second successive tournament in Kitzbühel as he overpowered Arthur Cazot 6-4, 6-3 in the final. The Kazakh world number 30 beat Cazot for the second week running, having knocked the Frenchman out en route to the title he won in Gstaad. So that is another amazing result for him as well. Of course, we're all moving towards the US Open, so a lot of action currently going on the hard courts around the world as the players make their tune-up for the big one at the US Open Championship. And already a couple of players have had to withdraw from the tournament, and the US Open, the site, will undergo an $800 million transformation with a top-to-bottom modernization of the famed Arthur Ashe Stadium and a new player performance center planned for the sprawling Queens campus. Work at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center will be completed by 2027's US Open, with construction taking place in phases to avoid any interruption for this or next year's editions of the tournament. The project will be entirely self-funded by the US Tennis Association without the use of any public funds or taxpayer money, according to the sport's national governing body, calling it the largest single investment in US tennis history. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay, rugby news for you. Let's have a look at the results of the matches over the weekend. The Boland Cavaliers yesterday, in a thriller, came through from the lower division into the top division and showed their mettle by beating the Toyota Cheetahs in an absolute thriller, 37 points to 35. Wasn't a good day for Western Province on Saturday. They were comprehensively beaten by the Bulls, 48-23. Even worse day for the Sharks. They were beaten by the Lions, 46-5. And that's, of course, the Lions, the Gauteng Golden Lions. We'll talk more about the other Lions in a minute. And then the Pumas, they were victorious over Griquas by 49 points to 28 on Friday evening. But the big game of the weekend, the only international test match, Australia 26, the British Lions 29. Wow, was there a touch of controversy there? It's very interesting refereeing decisions. The Wallabies say they will not wallow in self-pity. He was furious with Joe Schmidt at the controversial late try that cost his team the second test against the Lions, but he also insisted Australia will not wallow in self-pity. Smith's men led for 79 minutes in Melbourne on Saturday and thought they'd done enough to bank a sensational win and level the three-test series, but Hugo Keenan's try at the death for a 29-26 victory left them shattered and fuming. Schmidt was adamant the try should not have stood, pointing to a high clean-out in the lead-up by Jack Morgan on Carlo Tizzano, but their protests were waved away by the referee, the Italian referee, Andrea Piardi. Schmidt said contact was made above the shoulder, which made it illegal. Their perspective is they felt it was a decision that doesn't really live up to the big player safety push that they're talking about. So that's what we've seen, and we've watched a number of replays from different angles, and so it is what it is. We just have to accept it. In contrast, Lions coach Andy Farrell said he saw nothing wrong with the incident. Well, of course he was going to say that. He said he thought it was a brilliant clean-out. Despite Schmidt's obvious frustration at seeing victory snatched from their grasp, he knows he must now lift the team for the third and final test in Sydney next weekend. It's a dead rubber, but pride is at stake for his young side, who will level up in Melbourne from their passive performance at the first test in Brisbane. What a game it was. 90,000 spectators at the MCG. Fantastic to watch a game of rugby like that. I guess it is a pity in a way that the result turned out that way, because it would have made that final test match absolutely brilliant. To see who would have come home and won the series. And then just some football news for you over the weekend. A couple of interesting games. Last night it was England who are European champions after a penalty shootout victory over Spain in Euros. And it is Nigeria who are once again champions of Africa after beating Morocco in an absolute thriller. They were 2-0 down with the Nigerians to come back and win by 3-2. Unfortunately for Banyana, Ghana walked away with the bronze medal, third place for them after beating South Africa on penalties by 4-3 in a 1-all draw. What a sporting weekend it was. What a great sporting weekend it promises to be. And we'll keep you up to date throughout the course of the week. That is tonight's edition of From the Boardroom to the Locker Room. Be nice to each other. Until next time, bye for now.